Let's imagine for a second. You wake up in Tehran. It's January 2026. No signal, no WhatsApp, no news. Internet connectivity had collapsed to around 2% of normal levels. A blackout so total it isolates a nation. Outside, the city feels wrong. Streets that held chants one day are now filled with uniforms the next. At the market, prices have stopped making sense. Bread, cooking oil, basics people cannot live without, surging as the real hit record lows. By late December 2025, the currency had fallen to around 1.25 million reals per dollar. By early January, some trackers cited figures approaching 1.5 million. For ordinary families, that is life savings evaporating in real time. The death toll is contested, hard to verify under blackout, but credible monitors describe this as the deadliest unrest in years. Thousands killed, tens of thousands detained. And on the other side of the world, Donald Trump posts on Truth Social. He is imposing a 25% tariff on any country doing business with Iran. Put this all together and you get a political thriller. This is no longer just a protest story. It is an economic collapse colliding with political crackdown under an information blackout while outside powers look for leverage. This is one of the most dangerous moments the Islamic Republic has faced in decades. And almost no one outside Iran understands how it all started. So let me take you back, piece by piece, to see if we can make sense of this chaos. Tehran's Grand Bazaar is not just a market, it's an institution, a maze of covered corridors that has been the commercial heartbeat of the capital for generations. The merchant class here carried real political weight during the 1979 revolution. For decades, this has been the point. The bazaar is where stability is measured. But on December 28th, the shutters came down. Shopkeepers closed their stores, protests erupted, and the chants weren't about foreign policy, but survival. About a cost of living that had started to feel like a trap. In January 2025, the dollar traded around 700,000 reals. By December, it had collapsed past 1.25 million. Now compare that to the 2015 nuclear deal era when it sat near 32,000. And you begin to see how the currency is being hollowed out. And with currency collapse comes food inflation. Official statistics put inflation in the low 70s year on year. Meat became unaffordable. Families cut meals. Youth unemployment hovered around 1 in 5, and that doesn't count for underemployment. Within a week, monitors tracked protests across at least 78 cities. And the slogans evolved. It stopped being only about prices. People began chanting, "Death to the dictator." The regime's response was immediate. Officials blamed foreign enemies, called protesters rioters, insisted outside forces were manipulating the streets. But to understand why the regime was suddenly this fragile while the economy cracked this violently, you have to rewind again, 6 months earlier, to the summer of 2025.
U.S. Central Command, under the command of General Eric Kurilla, executed Operation Midnight Hammer, a deliberate and precise strike against 3 Iranian nuclear facilities.
It is June 2025. Israel launches Rising Lion, airstrikes deep inside Iran, targeting military infrastructure and nuclear sites. And behind the airstrikes is something even more unsettling: activity inside Iran itself. Reports claimed there were covert Israeli preparations, explosive drones, and hidden strike systems positioned inside Iran in advance. This was an attack from within, targeting Iran's nuclear sites. Then comes June 22nd. The United States enters directly in something called Operation Midnight Hammer. Airstrikes hit Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan, the heart of Iran's nuclear program. B-2 stealth bombers carrying 30,000-pound bunker busters are now part of this story. American officials say the goal was to destroy underground facilities that ordinary bombs cannot reach. Afterward, the damage assessment becomes a battlefield of its own. The Pentagon's public position reported widely was that the strike set Iran's program back 1 to 2 years.
I think we're thinking probably closer to 2 years, like degraded their program by 2 years.
Others suggested less. The IAEA couldn't settle the question because it lacked access to key bomb sites.
Our assessment of the battle damage around Fordow, Nantes, and Isfahan remains unchanged. I mean, we believe, and certainly all of the intelligence that we've seen have led us to believe that those facilities especially have been completely obliterated.
Director General Grossi warned the underground damage at Fordow was expected to be, quote, very significant, but months later, Reuters reported the agency still couldn't account for hundreds of kilograms of Iran's most enriched uranium. And that's where the real nightmare begins. The fear was now about nuclear materials that could have been moved before the bombs hit, relocated somewhere inspectors cannot reach. Well, the war lasted 12 days. Casualties inside Iran numbered in the hundreds to around 1,000. It shocked the public, exposed vulnerabilities, and it left the Islamic Republic bruised in a way people could now see. 6 months later, the bazaar shut down. To understand what happens next, you need to understand one organization, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. On paper, it is a military force, including the Basij, a paramilitary network experts describe as specialists in crushing dissent. Through its elite external arm, the IRGC coordinates Iran's regional network like Hezbollah, Iraqi militias, even the Houthis. But the Guard is more than military. Over 4 decades, it has grown into sort of an economic empire. One symbol of that empire is this organization called Khatam al-Anbiya, the Guard's construction arm. Khatam has been repeatedly positioned to win massive state contracts. This economic reach matters because it shapes how Iranians interpret the crisis. For many protesters, it is not just inflation, it is the belief that power and wealth have been captured by institutions that profit while ordinary families absorb the shock of sanctions. One chant says it all: our enemy is right here. They lie when they say it's America. Now comes the question that matters for Iran's future. If the system cracks, what does the Guard do? One part is, of course, tightening control. Deeper crackdowns, mass arrests, permanent internal security posture. Well, the other is managed change, a new face at the top while the core power structure endures. Succession planning reportedly accelerated around 86-year-old Supreme Leader Khamenei after the Summer War, with the Guard positioned as the decisive actor in whatever comes next. This was when the Supreme Leader raised concerns about external forces trying to hijack the protests.
Iran's supreme leaders made a rare acknowledgement that thousands of people have been killed in recent protests. But he's accusing the United States and Israel of being responsible for the violence.
You see, Khamenei has blamed the United States and Israel for inciting the unrest. The language is somewhat familiar now. Enemies abroad, sabotage at home. And here's the uncomfortable part. He's not wrong about that. Foreign powers are indeed trying to shape what happens next. In fact, Trump called Khamenei, quote, a sick man. He urged Iranians to take over your institutions and warned that if Iran, quote, violently kills peaceful protesters, the United States would, quote, come to their rescue. His words were, we are locked and loaded. Mike Pompeo posted a message wishing Happy New Year to every Iranian in the streets and to, quote, every Mossad agent walking beside them. You know what that means? That post does not prove Mossad agents are literally embedded in the protest movement, but it does show how openly some outside figures are now talking about regime change, like it's no longer a taboo idea, but a live possibility. While foreign actors didn't invent the anger, they are trying to harness it. But that pressure creates a second danger. It can unify the regime's base. In fact, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, and Egypt engaged in urgent diplomacy to prevent escalation, warning Washington that strikes could ignite broader instability in the region. They fear the region's worst lesson. Once bombs start falling, protests can get rebranded as treason, and a regime that is politically cornered can suddenly look to some like a defender of the nation. And that brings us back to the question of the future should the regime fall. If the Islamic Republic falls tomorrow, who takes over Iran? The honest answer, there is no consensus. Iran's opposition is loud and brave and angry, but it is also very fragmented, divided by ideology, geography, and history. This guy, Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of Iran's last Shah, who lives in the United States, by the way, has positioned himself as a rallying point. But listen to the streets and you hear the other chant, death to the oppressor, whether that be Shah or the supreme leader. For many Iranians, the choice is not between the current theocracy and the old monarchy. It is between two systems they associate with repression. They do not want to go backward. They want something new. The reformist current that once offered a middle path has been crushed. Figures from the 2009 Green Movement remain under house arrest. Nobel laureate Narges Mohammadi was rearrested in December 2025. The protest movement itself is decentralized, leaderless by design. That makes it harder to crush, but also harder to negotiate with. In 1979, the anti-Shah coalition had Khomeini waiting in exile, a single pole of gravity. Today, there is no equivalent figure. The opposition agrees on what it rejects, but it does not agree on what should replace it. That uncertainty creates a fear that the regime's collapse does not automatically equal freedom. The power vacuum will open doors to chaos, internal conflict, and regional actors rushing in to shape the outcome. So, where does this end? Does the Islamic Republic harden, adapt, bargain, or break? Well, there are four likely scenarios here. In the first one, the crackdown wins. The streets fall silent, not because minds have changed, but because people learn what speaking costs. If this happens, the Islamic Republic survives, but it emerges more militarized and more paranoid. A heavier security state, deeper surveillance, a country that functions but feels permanently under occupation by its own institutions. And there is a second scenario here, which is the system adapts. New faces, selective reform, just enough change to drain momentum while power stays intact. And in the third scenario, there could be a negotiated deal. This is where mediators come in. A true bargain will be difficult and it will require painful concessions, matched by sanctions relief and commitments that convince Tehran that it won't be attacked the moment it compromises. This is the least bloody part and usually the hardest. Of course, the fourth scenario is total collapse. A succession struggle spirals, the center weakens, rival factions compete, and Iran becomes the next multi-sided battlefield. And hovering over everything is the nuclear question. The IAEA still can't verify the fate of roughly 441 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%. Some analysts warn that Iran's collapse could be more destabilizing than its survival. And this is not because the regime deserves to endure, but because a chaotic fall could set the region on fire. And that is the bind. Well, whatever comes next, whether the system survives, adapts, negotiates, or fractures, around 90 million people will still be there, still trying to buy bread, still trying to find work, still trying to raise children in a country that keeps asking them to endure just a little bit longer. Iranians are the most important part of this story, and I just hope the world considers them in whatever policy is being drafted about the region.